She was late for work, but she couldn't ignore a stranger in trouble. Her act of kindness cost her job, but it changed her life forever. What seemed like an unfixable mistake turned into an unexpected opportunity. In the middle of the chaos, she found something she never saw coming: a fresh start. Before you hear this inspiring story, don't forget to subscribe for more amazing tales. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as Emma cleaned another table at Aroma and Cumbra Cafe. Her calloused fingers firmly gripped the cloth, but her mind wandered to the bills piling up at home. The small apartment where she lived with her father, Robert, once a respected businessman in the textile industry, now seemed too small to contain so many worries. Emma observed her reflection in the cafe window. At 25, the dark circles under her eyes betrayed sleepless nights, but her green eyes still maintained a gleam of determination. Her brown hair was tied in a disheveled bun, typical of someone who works at a frantic pace from the early hours of the morning. "Emma, there's a lady who wants to talk to you," whispered Denise, her co-worker, with an intrigued expression. "She's sitting at table 7, looks important." Straightening her wrinkled uniform, Emma headed to the indicated table. An elegant woman, appearing to be in her 60s, waited for her. She wore a navy blue silk suit and discreet but visibly expensive jewelry. Her shrewd eyes analyzed Emma from head to toe. "Miss Emma Sanders?" she asked with a controlled voice. "I'm Eleanor Mitchell. We need to talk about a matter of mutual interest." The surname Mitchell made Emma freeze. It was the same as the company that had ruined her father 5 years ago, when his partner, Charles Mitchell, disappeared with all the company's capital. "Please sit down," continued Eleanor, indicating the chair across from her. "I have a proposal that could solve all your financial problems." Emma hesitated but eventually sat down. The restaurant was almost empty at that hour of the afternoon, and her curiosity spoke louder. "I'll get straight to the point," said Eleanor, lowering her voice. "My son, Nathan Mitchell, is in a coma after an accident. There is a clause in his will that states he must be married before turning 30, otherwise his entire fortune will be transferred to a charitable fund." Emma felt her stomach turn. Nathan Mitchell was a frequent name in the social columns, known both for his successful ventures and his busy personal life. "And what does that have to do with me?" asked Emma, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need you to marry my son," Eleanor replied bluntly. "In exchange, all your father's debts will be paid, and you will receive a generous monthly allowance." The world seemed to spin around Emma. The proposal was absurd, but the words "debts paid" echoed in her mind. Her father had lost everything: the company, the house, his health. Now he worked as a salesman in an appliance store, but his salary barely covered his heart medications. "Why me?" Emma managed to ask. "Because you're perfect," replied Eleanor with a calculated smile. "Young, beautiful, no scandals in your past, and mainly desperate enough to accept." The rawness of those words hit Emma like a slap, but there was truth in them. The debts grew every day, and her father was increasingly dejected. "And if your son wakes up?" asked Emma, her voice trembling slightly. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens," replied Eleanor, taking an envelope from her purse. "Here's the contract. You'll have to live in the mansion, of course. We'll keep up appearances. In exchange, all your family's financial problems disappear." Emma took the envelope with trembling hands. The tears that threatened to fall were forcefully contained. She wouldn't give Eleanor the pleasure of seeing her cry. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked, trying to buy time to think. "Until tomorrow," replied Eleanor, standing up. "My son turns 30 in 3 weeks. We don't have time to waste." She left a card on the table and departed, her expensive perfume leaving a trail in the air. Emma remained seated, looking at the envelope in her hands, feeling the weight of the decision she would have to make. That night, upon arriving home, she found her father sleeping on the sofa, surrounded by unpaid bills. His face, once so proud, was marked by fatigue and worry. On the kitchen table, another utility disconnection notice. Emma sat on the small balcony of the apartment, watching the city lights. The envelope weighed in her lap like lead. Eleanor's words echoed in her mind, desperate enough to accept. Yes, she was desperate. desperate enough to marry a man in a coma, to enter a family that had destroyed hers. The cold night wind couldn't cool the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. Her cell phone vibrated. It was a message from the hospital charging the last installment of her father's medical tests. Emma looked once more at the envelope and, with trembling hands, opened it. The contract was extensive, detailed, impersonal, just like her future life would be. The next morning, Emma had already made her decision. Not for herself, but for her father. For all the nights she saw him cry in secret, for all the medicines he gave up buying to pay the rent, for all the sacrifice he had made for her throughout her life. She picked up the phone and dialed the number on the card Eleanor had left. After 3 rings, the cold voice answered. "I accept," said Emma, feeling each word weigh on her tongue. "Excellent," replied Eleanor. "A car. We'll come to pick you up at 2 p.m. Pack your bags. Your new life begins today." Emma hung up the phone and looked around the small apartment. The peeling walls, the old furniture, the faded curtains. In a few hours, all this would be past. She was about to enter a world of luxury and privilege, but she had never felt so poor in her entire life. The black, gleaming car glided through the streets of Boston like a fish in murky waters. Emma, seated in the back, observed the urban landscape gradually transform. The grey buildings and busy downtown streets gave way to tree-lined avenues and imposing mansions. Her heart beat rapidly, a mixture of anxiety and apprehension. The 2 worn suitcases beside her contained everything she owned. She had left a letter for her father, explaining her decision in the best way possible, without mentioning the sordid details of the agreement. She had promised to call as soon as she was settled. The driver, a middle-aged man with an impassive expression, did not attempt to start a conversation. Emma silently thanked him for that. Her mind was already too agitated with her own thoughts. After almost an hour's journey, the car finally stopped in front of an imposing gate. A discreet sign announced, "Mitchell Residence." The gate opened automatically, revealing an avenue lined with century-old trees. The mansion appeared before her eyes, a majestic neoclassical construction. Its white columns rose imposingly, and the enormous windows reflected the afternoon sun. It was as if it had come out of a period film. Eleanor Mitchell waited at the entrance, her serious countenance contrasting with the beauty of the place. Beside her, a tall, thin man with greying hair and thin-rimmed glasses observed Emma with curiosity. "Welcome to your new home, Emma," said Eleanor, her tone more formal than welcoming. "This is Walter, our butler. He will attend to your needs." Emma got out of the car, feeling diminutive amid the grandeur around her. Walter made a small bow. "It's a pleasure, miss. Allow me to take your bags," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Eleanor led Emma inside the mansion. The interior was even more impressive. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, works of art that certainly were worth more than everything Emma had ever owned in her life. "Your room is on the 2nd floor," Eleanor informed, as they climbed a majestic staircase. "Tomorrow we'll arrange a suitable wardrobe for you. We can't have the future Mrs. Mitchell dressing like, well, you understand." Emma swallowed hard, feeling the weight of those words. She was about to respond when a male voice echoed down the corridor. "Mother, who is this?" A man of about 35 approached. His blue eyes, identical to Eleanor's, analyzed Emma with a mixture of curiosity and distrust. "Ah, David," said Eleanor, her tone changing slightly. "This is Emma, your brother's fiancée." David raised an eyebrow, an ironic smile forming on his lips. "Fiancé? Lucas has been in a coma for months and suddenly appears with a fiancé. Interesting." Emma felt her face burn. The way David looked at her made her feel like an object on display. "The circumstances are none of your business, David," Eleanor cut in. "Emma is here to secure the family's and business's future. That's all you need to know." David raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, but his eyes remained fixed on Emma. Of course, welcome to the family, little sister-in-law." With one last enigmatic look, he walked away down the corridor. Eleanor let out an exasperated sigh. "Don't worry about David, he can be difficult sometimes. Come, your room is this way. The room assigned to Emma was larger than the entire apartment where she lived with her father. A king-size bed dominated the center, covered with silk sheets. A balcony offered a stunning view of the property's gardens. The closet is empty, for now, but early tomorrow my assistant will come with a stylist to arrange your new wardrobe, said Eleanor. The bathroom is that door on the left, oh, and here. She handed Emma a thick envelope. Your first allowance, use it wisely. Emma opened the envelope, her eyes widening at the number of high-value bills. It was more money than she had ever seen in her entire life. Thank you, she murmured, still stunned. Eleanor nodded. Dinner is served at 8 p.m. Dress appropriately. Walter will come to get you. With that, she left, leaving Emma alone in the sumptuous room. As soon as the door closed, Emma collapsed on the bed, the tears she had contained throughout the day finally escaping. The room was beautiful. The money in her hands would solve all her father's problems, but she had never felt so alone. She got up and walked to the balcony. Below, the gardens extended as far as the eye could see. An Olympic-sized pool glittered under the afternoon sun. Everything was perfect, flawless. Her eyes wandered over the property until they landed on a separate wing of the main mansion. The curtains were closed, but she could swear she had seen movement in one of the windows. That must be where he is, she thought, imagining the man in a coma who was now her husband. Nathan Mitchell, the successful businessman, the social column, playboy, now reduced to an inert body in a hospital bed. The sound of footsteps in the corridor brought her back to reality. She quickly wiped away her tears and went to the empty closet. Among her few clothes, she chose the least simple dress she owned. It was nothing compared to what Eleanor wore, but it would have to do for now. As she prepared for dinner, Emma tried to convince herself that she had made the right choice. The money would save her father, would give him the treatment he deserved. But at what cost? What kind of life awaited her in this mansion that seemed more like a luxury prison? A soft knock at the door announced Walter's arrival. It was time to face her new reality. With a last glance at the envelope with money on the dresser, Emma took a deep breath and went out into the corridor. The game had begun, and she needed to learn the rules quickly if she wanted to survive in this new world. Dinner at the Mitchell mansion was as elaborate an event as it was silent. Emma, seated at the long mahogany table, felt like an intruder in a period film. Eleanor occupied the head of the table, her impeccable posture as she delicately cut a piece of grilled salmon. David, seated to his mother's right, cast furtive glances at Emma between bites. The clinking of silver cutlery against fine porcelain was the only sound that broke the oppressive silence. Emma barely touched her food, her stomach a knot of nervousness. So, Emma, David's voice cut through the air like a razor, making her start. Tell us more about yourself. How did you meet my dear brother? Eleanor's look could have frozen hell. David, don't be rude. Emma and Nathan met through mutual friends. There's no need for an interrogation. Emma swallowed hard, grateful for the intervention, but aware of David's inquisitive look. He clearly didn't believe the story fabricated by his mother. Of course, forgive my curiosity, replied David, an ironic smile playing on his lips. It's just that it's so unexpected. Nathan was always so averse to the idea of marriage. People change, son, said Eleanor, her tone leaving no room for discussion. Now, why don't you tell us about the company's new project? The conversation shifted to business, and Emma found herself lost in a sea of corporate terms and astronomical numbers. She took the opportunity to better observe her new relatives. Eleanor, with her pearl necklace and impenetrable expression, seemed like a queen on her throne. Every movement of hers was calculated, every word measured. David, on the other hand, emanated a restless energy. His astute eyes never stopped evaluating Emma, as if trying to decipher a particularly difficult puzzle. After dessert, an elaborate chocolate pavée that Emma could barely taste, Eleanor stood up. Emma, dear, would you like to accompany me? To the office. There are some details we need to discuss. With her heart in her throat, Emma followed Eleanor through the corridors of the mansion. The office was an imposing room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a panoramic view of the gardens. Sit down, ordered Eleanor, indicating a leather armchair. She herself positioned herself behind a majestic desk. "Tomorrow you will meet Nathan." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Is he conscious?" "No," replied Eleanor dryly. "But it's important that you familiarize yourself with him. After all, in the eyes of the world, you are a loving couple." She slid a folder across the desk. "Here is everything you need to know about Nathan, his history, his tastes, his quirks. Study it well. If anyone asks, you met 6 months ago at a charity event." Emma leafed through the folder, feeling as if she were invading a stranger's privacy. Photos of Nathan at various social events, newspaper clippings about his ventures, even a list of his favorite foods. "And about the accident?" asked Emma hesitantly. Eleanor's eyes narrowed dangerously. "It was an unfortunate car accident. There is nothing more to be said about it." Something in Eleanor's voice made Emma shrink. There was more to this story she could feel. But she knew it wasn't the moment to press. "I understand," she murmured, lowering her eyes to the folder. "Good," said Eleanor, her voice softening slightly. "Now, about your routine. You will have etiquette and social behavior classes 3 times a week. Walter will accompany you on your outings, which should be limited and discreet. Remember, you are now a Mitchell. Every step you take will be observed and judged." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of that new identity on her shoulders. "Oh, and one more thing," added Eleanor, her tone icy. "Stay away from David. My eldest son can be persuasive when he wants to be. Don't be deceived by his charms." With a gesture, Eleanor dismissed Emma, who left the office feeling more lost than ever. Back in her room, Emma threw herself on the bed, the folder about Nathan at her side. Eleanor's words echoed in her mind. Stay away from David. Why? What? Did the Mitchell matriarch fear? A light knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Walter, the butler. "Excuse me, miss, there is someone who would like to meet you." Intrigued, Emma followed Walter through the corridors of the mansion to a smaller, cozier room than the others. There, seated in an armchair, was a middle-aged woman, grey hair framing a gentle face. "Emma, this is Mrs. Sarah, Nathan's stepmother," Walter introduced before discreetly withdrawing. Sarah stood up, a warm smile on her lips. "How good to finally meet you, dear. Come, sit with me." Hesitantly, Emma settled beside Sarah. There was something in the woman's presence that made her feel instantly more comfortable. "I imagine you're feeling a bit lost," said Sarah, her voice soft and understanding. "This house can be intimidating at first." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. "It's all so different. I don't know if—" Sarah took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I know, dear. I felt the same way when I married Nathan's father. But you are stronger than you think, and you are not alone." For a moment they sat in silence, the first comfortable silence Emma had experienced since arriving at the mansion. "Sarah," Emma began hesitantly, "could you tell me more about Nathan? About what he was like before the accident?" Sarah's face lit up with a sad smile. "Oh, Nathan, he was always a brilliant young man, you know. Perhaps a bit impetuous at times, but with a huge heart." She paused, her eyes lost in memories. "In the last days before the accident, he was different, worried about something. He spent hours locked in the office making mysterious calls." Emma felt a shiver. "Do you think the accident might have been—" "Shh," Sarah interrupted her gently, casting a cautious glance at the door. "There are things in this house that— better not said aloud, dear, but stay alert. Observe, and if you need anything at all, come find me." With a final squeeze of her hand, Sarah stood up. "Now go rest. The next few days will be intense." As she walked back to her room, Emma's mind was buzzing. The mystery surrounding Nathan's accident, Sarah's veiled warnings, David's barely disguised hostility. As she lay down, looking at the ornate ceiling of her new room, Emma knew one thing. There was much more to this story than a simple marriage agreement. And somehow she was at the center of it all. Sleep was slow to come, and when it finally did, it was populated by restless dreams of dark corridors and threatening whispers. Morning arrived with a mixture of anxiety and apprehension for Emma. After a restless night, filled with confusing dreams and sudden awakenings, she prepared for the moment she had been dreading, meeting Nathan Mitchell, the man who was now her husband on paper. Walter knocked softly at the door at 9 o'clock sharp. "Miss Emma, Mrs. Eleanor awaits you for breakfast. Afterward, I will accompany you to the medical wing." Emma nodded, nervously adjusting the dress she had found in her closet that morning, an elegant piece that certainly wasn't there the night before. Apparently, Eleanor wasted no time. Breakfast was a tense meal. Eleanor, impeccable as always, gave instructions between sips of coffee. "Remember, Emma, when you're with Nathan, talk to him. Doctors say patients in a coma can hear. Tell him about your day, about the weather, anything. It's important to keep up appearances, even in these circumstances." Emma agreed silently, her throat too dry to form words. David, who until then had been observing the scene with an ironic smile, finally spoke. "Don't worry, little sister-in-law. Nathan was always a great listener. I'm sure you'll have long and deep conversations." The cutting look that Eleanor gave. Her eldest son did not go unnoticed by Emma. There was a palpable tension between the two, something that went beyond the current situation. After breakfast, Walter guided Emma through a long, silent corridor to the mansion's medical wing. The key contrast was striking. On one side, the opulent luxury of the main house. On the other, the asepsis and modernity of a high-standard hospital room. Before opening the door, Walter paused, his gentle eyes meeting Emma's. "Courage, miss. Remember, behind all this apparatus, there is just a man in need of care and attention." With a lump in her throat, Emma entered the room. The rhythmic sound of monitoring equipment filled her ears. In the center of the room, a hospital bed, and in it, Nathan Mitchell. Emma approached hesitantly. Nathan was a handsome man, that was undeniable. His features were strong, his jaw well-defined, his dark hair contrasting with the paleness of his skin. He seemed to be just sleeping, were it not for the tubes and wires connected to his body. "Hello, Nathan," she whispered, feeling strangely vulnerable. I'm Emma." Silence. Only the constant beep of the machines responded. Emma sat in the chair next to the bed, her hands trembling slightly. "I know this is strange. It is for me, too. But I'm here now, and I'm going to take care of you." Words came out of her mouth almost involuntarily. Despite the strangeness of the situation, there was something about Nathan that awakened a protective instinct in Emma. She spent the next hour talking softly to Nathan. She told him about the weather outside, about the flowers she saw in the garden, even about her old job at the cafe. It was a one-sided conversation, of course, but somehow it felt right. When she was about to get up, she noticed something. A slight movement in Nathan's fingers, so subtle that for a moment she thought she had imagined it. "Nathan?" she called, leaning closer. Nothing happened. The door opened, startling Emma. It was Sarah carrying a tray with water and some medications. "Ah, dear, you're here," smiled Sarah. "How was it?" Emma hesitated, still looking at Nathan's hand. "It was interesting. Sarah, I think I saw—" But before she could complete the sentence, Eleanor's voice sounded from the door. "Emma, the stylist has arrived. We need to start building your new wardrobe." With a last look at Nathan, Emma followed Eleanor, leaving behind a thoughtful Sarah. The next few hours were a blur of fabrics, measurements, and decisions about colors and styles that Emma had never imagined having to make. The stylist, an elegant woman named Sophia, seemed determined to transform Emma into the perfect society lady. "Darling, with those green eyes, you're going to kill in shades of emerald," said Sophia, holding an evening gown against Emma's body. While trying on the umpteenth piece of clothing, Emma couldn't get the image of Nathan's moving fingers out of her head. Had it been just her imagination? The day passed quickly, and soon night fell over the mansion. Exhausted, Emma retired to her room, her head spinning with everything that had happened. She was about to lie down when she heard a light knock at the door. It was Sarah, her face a mask of concern. "Emma, dear, can I come in? We need to talk." With her heart racing, Emma signaled for Sarah to enter. The older woman closed the door carefully behind her and approached, speaking in a low voice. "About what you saw today with Nathan. You noticed something different, didn't you?" Emma nodded, hesitant. I think I saw his fingers move. But it was so quick I thought I had imagined it." Sarah took Emma's hands in hers. "You didn't imagine it, dear. I've also been noticing small changes. A movement here, a change in breathing there." "But that's good, isn't it?" asked Emma, confused by Sarah's worried expression. "It should be," replied Sarah, her gaze wandering to the window. "But there's something strange happening in this house, Emma. Nathan's medication. I have my suspicions that it might be being manipulated." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Manipulated? But why? Who would do that? Sarah shook her head. "I'm not sure, but we need to be cautious. From now on, pay close attention to everything that happens around Nathan, and please don't mention this to anyone, especially Eleanor or David." With a final squeeze of Emma's hands, Sarah stood up. "Rest, dear, and remember, in this house the walls have ears." When Sarah left, Emma found herself alone with her turbulent thoughts. What exactly had she gotten herself into? What was happening to Nathan? And most importantly, who could she trust? Lying in bed, staring at the ornate ceiling, Emma knew that her life had been transformed into something much more complex and dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Sleep, when it finally came, was agitated and full of nightmares about giant syringes and threatening whispers echoing through endless corridors. Days at the Mitchell mansion turned into weeks, and Emma found herself immersed in a routine as, strange as it was, exhausting. Mornings were filled with etiquette and social behavior classes taught by a stern instructor named Madame Eloise. Afternoons were dedicated to visits to Nathan's room, where Emma spent hours reading to him, telling him about her day, or simply holding his hand in silence. The nights, however, were the most tense moment. Elaborate dinners with Eleanor and David, where each word seemed to have a double meaning, each look carried a hidden intention. Emma felt constantly watched, as if she were walking on a minefield. On a particularly hot afternoon, while reading to Nathan a novel she had found in the mansion's library, Emma noticed something different. His breathing seemed stronger, more present. Leaning over the bed, she observed his face attentively. "Nathan," she called softly, "can you hear me?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, Nathan's eyelids fluttered. Emma felt her heart race. She was about to call for help when the door opened abruptly. "What's going on here?" Eleanor's cutting voice filled the room. Emma moved away from the bed, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. I was just reading to Nathan. I thought I saw—" "Saw what?" interrupted Eleanor, her eyes flashing. "Nothing," replied Emma quickly, remembering Sarah's warning. "It must have been my imagination." Eleanor observed her for a long moment. Her eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Well, that's enough for today. Go prepare for dinner. We have important guests tonight." As she left the room, Emma couldn't help but notice Eleanor approaching Nathan's bed, whispering something to the nurse who had just entered. A chill ran down her spine. Dinner that night was, indeed, an important event. The dining room table was impeccably arranged, with the best porcelain and silver cutlery. Emma, dressed in an elegant emerald green dress chosen by Sophia, felt like an actress about to enter a scene. The guests were a middle-aged couple, Victor Anderson, an important investor, and his wife Claudia. Eleanor received them with a rehearsed smile, introducing Emma as Nathan's lovely wife. "What a terrible situation," commented Claudia, casting a sympathetic look at Emma. "Getting married and soon after having your husband in a coma. You are very brave, dear." Emma forced a smile, repeating the story that Eleanor had created. "Nathan and I met a few months ago. When the accident happened, I knew my place was by his side." The conversation flowed during dinner, revolving around business and high society gossip. Emma remained silent most of the time, observing the dynamics around her. Victor seemed especially interested in the Mitchell Company's future projects. "And what about that big project that Nathan was developing before the accident?" asked Victor, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. What happened to it? A tense silence fell over the table. Eleanor and David exchanged a quick glance before Eleanor responded with a forced smile. Unfortunately, with Nathan's condition, many projects had to be reassessed. But David has been doing an admirable job in keeping everything running. David raised his glass in a silent toast, but Emma noticed a shadow pass over his eyes. There was more to this story. After dinner, while the men retired to the office to discuss business, Emma found herself alone with Claudia in the living room. The older woman approached, lowering her voice. "My dear, you need to be careful," said Claudia, her eyes scanning the environment to ensure they were alone. "There are rumors about Nathan's accident. Not everything is as it seems in this family." Before Emma could respond, Eleanor entered the room, abruptly ending the conversation. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of fake smiles and superficial conversations. Later, alone in her room, Emma tried to process everything that had happened. Claudia's words echoed in her mind, mixing with Sarah's warnings and her own observations. A light knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Walter, the butler, his normally serene face now marked by lines of concern. "Miss Emma," he whispered, looking nervously over his shoulder, "there is something you need to see." Intrigued and a little apprehensive, Emma followed Walter through the dark corridors of the mansion. They stopped in front of a door she had never noticed before, hidden behind an ornate tapestry. "This is Mr. Nathan's old office," explained Walter, his voice barely above a whisper. "No one has entered here since the accident, but, well, see for yourself." With trembling hands, Walter unlocked the door and pushed it open gently. The office was exactly as Nathan had left it months ago. Papers scattered across the desk, a half-empty coffee cup, now covered in mold. But what caught Emma's attention was a large painting on the opposite wall. Walter approached it, and with a quick movement turned it, revealing a safe embedded in the wall. "Mr. Nathan entrusted me with the combination shortly before the accident," said Walter, his fingers already turning the dial of the safe. "He told me that if anything happened to him, I should show the contents to someone trustworthy." The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, there was a thick folder and a flash drive. "Why are you showing me this?" asked Emma, her heart racing. Walter looked her in the eyes, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. "Because, Miss Emma, I believe you are the only person in this house who truly cares about Mr. Nathan's welfare, and because I fear that what happened to him was not an accident." With trembling hands, Emma took the folder and the flash drive. At that moment, she knew that her life at the Mitchell mansion had changed irrevocably. Whatever was contained in those documents, she was certain that the truth would be much darker and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. "Thank you, Walter," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll examine this carefully." As they silently returned to their rooms, Emma felt the weight of the Mitchell family's secrets on her shoulders. She knew that, from that moment on, each step she took could be crucial not only for Nathan's fate, but also for her own safety. Emma spent the night wide awake, poring over the documents Walter had handed her. The folder contained detailed financial reports, printed emails, and handwritten notes by Nathan. The flash drive, password protected, resisted her initial attempts to access it. With her heart racing, she began to piece together the puzzle. Nathan had discovered irregularities in the company's accounts, large sums of money being diverted to offshore accounts. Even more alarming, there were indications that Mitchell Enterprises was involved in business with shell companies linked to illicit activities. In the margins of one of the reports, a note by Nathan caught her attention. "D and M involved. Need more proof. D and Monsieur David and Mother." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. If her suspicions were correct, Nathan's accident took on much more sinister contours. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made her hurriedly put away the documents. She barely had time to hide everything before a soft knock sounded at the door. "Emma, are you awake?" It was Sarah's voice. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, Emma opened the door. Sarah entered quickly, her face a mask of concern. "Dear, something happened to Nathan," she said in a low voice. "He had a complication during the night. The doctors are with him now." Emma's heart raced. "What kind of complication? Is he okay?" Sarah hesitated, looking nervously at the door. He almost woke up, Emma. For a moment he opened his eyes. But then... "Then what?" pressed Emma, feeling fear grow in her chest. "Then Eleanor appeared," continued Sarah, her voice barely above a whisper. "She ordered everyone out of the room, stayed alone with him for a few minutes. When she came out, Nathan was stable again, deeply unconscious." Emma felt her blood freeze in her veins. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together in a terrifying way. "Sarah," said Emma, her voice trembling slightly, "I think I discovered something big." Quickly, she told Sarah about the documents, about Nathan's suspicions regarding the company's illicit activities. Sarah's expression changed from concern to palpable fear. "Oh my God," she murmured. "This explains and so many things. Emma, you need to be very careful. If Eleanor or David discover that you know..." A noise in the corridor made them freeze. Footsteps were approaching. Sarah quickly stood up. "I'll distract them," she whispered. "You need to hide this evidence. And Emma, don't trust anyone." With those words, Sarah hurriedly left the room. Emma barely had time to hide the documents before another knock sounded at the door. This time it was Eleanor. "Emma, dear," she said, her tone falsely sweet. "I hope I didn't wake you. We had a small emergency with Nathan during the night, but everything is fine now. Why don't you come down for breakfast? We have much to discuss." Breakfast was a surreal experience. Eleanor acted as if nothing had happened, discussing plans for a charity event that the family would soon organize. David, on the other hand, seemed distracted, his eyes constantly wandering to his cell phone. Emma forced each bite, her stomach turning with the weight of the secrets she now carried. She observed Eleanor and David, trying to see beyond the masks they wore. Were they really capable of harming their own son and brother? After breakfast, Emma headed to Nathan's room as usual. To her surprise, she found an unknown doctor examining him. "Ah, you must be Mrs. Mitchell," said the doctor, extending his hand. "Dr. James Reynolds. I was called to do a complete evaluation of Mr. Nathan's condition." Emma shook the doctor's hand, noticing the curious look he cast in her direction. "Nice to meet you, Dr. Reynolds. Has there been any change?" The doctor hesitated for a moment. "Well, it's curious. The tests show increased brain activity in recent weeks. In theory, this could indicate that Mr. Nathan is closer to waking up. However, pressed Emma, feeling her heart accelerate, the medication he's receiving is a bit unusual for cases like his," continued Dr. Reynolds, lowering his voice. "I suggested some changes to the treatment, but Mrs. Eleanor insisted on maintaining the current regimen." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Her suspicions were confirming themselves in a frightening way. "Dr. Reynolds," she said, carefully choosing her words, "if I wanted a second opinion about Nathan's treatment, confidentially, could you recommend someone?" The doctor looked her in the eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. "Of course, Mrs. Mitchell. I have a colleague, Dr. Michael Bennett, a specialist in cases like Mr. Nathan's. I can give you his contact." Discreetly, of course. Emma nodded gratefully. While Dr. Reynolds wrote the number on a piece of paper, the door to the room opened suddenly. David entered, his gaze alternating between Emma and the doctor. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his casual tone not completely hiding a note of suspicion. "Perfectly," replied Dr. Reynolds, discreetly handing the paper to Emma. "I was just explaining the results of the latest tests to Mrs. Mitchell." David observed the scene for a few more seconds before turning to leave. "Great. Emma, my mother wants to see you in her office when you're done here." As soon as David left, Emma quickly put the paper with Dr. Bennett's contact in her pocket. She knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but she had no choice. Nathan's life, and perhaps her own, depended on her next actions. As she prepared to face Eleanor, Emma felt the weight of her discoveries. The Mitchell family's secrets were darker than she could have ever imagined, and now she was at the center of a web of lies and betrayals. One wrong step could be fatal, but she was determined to uncover the truth and save Nathan, no matter the cost. Emma took a deep breath before knocking on the door of Eleanor's office. Her heart was pounding, aware that each word, each gesture, could betray her. "Come in," Eleanor's authoritative voice sounded from inside. Upon entering, Emma found not only Eleanor, but also David. The two observed her with an intensity that made her feel like prey before predators. "Sit down, dear," said Eleanor, indicating a chair. Her tone was soft, but her eyes remained cold. "We have important matters to discuss." Emma sat, trying to maintain her composure. "About what?" David leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. "About your sudden interest in Nathan's medical condition." Emma's stomach knotted. "Did they know something?" Eleanor continued, her voice calculatedly casual. "Dr. Reynolds informed us about your curiosity regarding Nathan's treatment. We understand your concern, but want to assure you that he is receiving the best possible care." "Of course," Emma managed to say, forcing a smile. "I just want the best for Nathan." "Naturally," said David, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But you see, Emma, sudden changes in treatment can be dangerous. It's better to leave these decisions to the experts, don't you think?" Emma felt her blood freeze. The veiled threat was clear. "Absolutely," she replied, keeping her voice firm. "I completely trust your judgment and that of the doctors." Eleanor smiled, but the gesture did not diminish the coldness in her eyes. "Great. Now there's another matter. The charity event I mentioned at breakfast. It will be your first official public appearance as Nathan's wife. It's crucial that everything goes perfectly." For the next few minutes, Eleanor detailed the event, the expectations about Emma's behavior, the important people she should impress. Emma listened attentively, agreeing with everything, while her mind worked furiously, seeking a way out of that labyrinth of lies and threats. When she was finally released from the office, Emma felt as if she had run a marathon. Her body trembled with contained adrenaline. Taking refuge in her room, she took out her cell phone and, with trembling fingers, dialed the number Dr. Reynolds had given her. After a few rings, a male voice answered. "Dr. Michael Bennett speaking." "Dr. Bennett," Emma whispered, looking nervously at the door. "My name is Emma Mitchell. Dr. Reynolds gave me your contact. I need your help urgently, but it has to be with total discretion." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I understand. We can meet at my office tomorrow at 3 p.m. I have an opening." Emma quickly agreed, noting the address. As soon as she hung up, she heard footsteps in the corridor. Quickly, she hid the paper with the address and picked up a book, pretending to read. The door opened without a knock. It was David. "Sorry for the intrusion," he said, his tone falsely casual. "I just wanted to see if everything was all right after our conversation." Emma forced a smile. "Of course, everything's great. I was just relaxing a bit." David approached, his eyes scanning the room. "You know, Emma, since you arrived, I feel there's something different in the air, as if the mansion held more secrets than before." Emma's heart raced, but she maintained a neutral expression. "I don't know what you're talking about, David. I'm just trying to adapt to the new life." He moved closer, leaning over her. His expensive perfume couldn't completely mask an odor that Emma couldn't identify. "Fear? Guilt? Just remember," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "In this family, loyalty is everything, and secrets, well, secrets can sometimes be deadly." With one last penetrating look, David left the room, leaving Emma trembling. She knew she was walking on thin ice. The siege was closing in and she needed to act quickly. That night, while the mansion slept, Emma sneaked silently to Nathan's room. Sitting beside his bed, she took his inert hand. "Nathan," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to fight. I'm trying to uncover the truth, trying to save you, But I can't do it alone. Please, come back to me." For a moment, Emma could swear she felt Nathan's fingers move slightly in her hand. But before she could be sure, she heard a noise in the corridor. Quickly, she got up and hid behind a curtain. The door opened, and Eleanor entered, followed by a man Emma didn't recognize. "Are you sure no one will interrupt us?" asked the man, his voice low and hoarse. "Absolutely," replied Eleanor. "Now do what needs to be done. We can't risk him." "Waking up. Not now." Emma watched, horrified, as the man took a syringe from his briefcase. Her heart was beating so hard that she feared they might hear it. When the door closed behind Eleanor and the stranger, Emma emerged from her hiding place. Trembling, she knew she had just witnessed something she should never have seen. With silent steps, she returned to her room, her mind in turmoil. The pieces of the puzzle were fitting together in a terrifying way. Emma knew that her meeting with Dr. Bennett the next day could be her only chance to save Nathan, but she also knew that, from that moment on, every move of hers would be a dangerous dance with death. As she lay down, unable to sleep, Emma swore to herself that no matter what happened, she would uncover the truth and save Nathan, even if it meant confronting the demons that the Mitchell family so carefully hid. Day dawned gray, as if the sky itself reflected the somber atmosphere that hung over the Mitchell mansion. Emma had barely slept, her mind filled with disturbing images from the night before. During breakfast, she struggled to maintain a facade of normality. Eleanor animatedly discussed the preparations for the charity event, while David observed her with a penetrating look over his coffee cup. "Emma?" "Dear," said Eleanor, her voice too sweet, "don't forget we have the final fitting for your dress for the event this afternoon. At 3 p.m., right?" Emma's heart jumped. It was exactly the time of her secret consultation with Dr. Bennett. "Actually, Eleanor, I booked a spa session to relax a bit before the big day. Can we postpone the fitting until tomorrow?" Eleanor frowned for a moment, but soon her smile returned. "Of course, dear, what a great idea. You deserve a moment of rest." Emma managed a smile of gratitude, feeling David's gaze burning the back of her neck. At 2:30 p.m., Emma discreetly left the mansion, having convinced Walter not to accompany her, claiming she needed a moment alone. She took a taxi and gave the driver the address of Dr. Bennett's office. The office was small and discreet, located in a commercial building in the city center. Dr. Bennett, a middle-aged man with kind eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses, received her with a firm handshake. "Mrs. Mitchell, please come in," he said, guiding her to his office. Once inside, Emma poured out the entire story: the suspicions about Nathan's accident, the documents she had found, the suspicious medication, and what she had witnessed the night before. Dr. Bennett listened attentively, his face becoming more serious with each revelation. When Emma finished, he stood up and went to a locked cabinet from which he took a thick folder. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, his voice serious, "what I'm about to show you is extremely confidential and potentially dangerous." He opened the folder, revealing a series of medical exams and reports. "About a year ago, Nathan Mitchell sought me out in secret. He suspected he was being slowly poisoned." Emma felt her blood freeze. "Poisoned?" Dr. Bennett nodded gravely. "The tests confirmed his suspicions. We found traces of a rare and difficult-to-detect substance in his system. Nathan was investigating illicit activities in the family company and believed someone was trying to silence him." "But the accident," Emma began, her mind spinning with the implications. "Probably wasn't an accident," completed the doctor. "Based on what you've told me about Nathan's current medication, I have reason to believe they're keeping him in an induced coma." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. "So, all this was planned?" Dr. Bennett placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Mrs. Mitchell, what you've discovered is extremely dangerous. Powerful people will do anything to keep these secrets buried." He then took a small vial from his drawer. "This is an antidote for the substance they're using on Nathan. Administered correctly, it can help him wake up. But you need to be extremely careful." Emma took the vial with trembling hands. "How can I—" A sudden noise in the corridor interrupted them. Heavy footsteps approached the office door rapidly. Dr. Bennett acted quickly, pushing the folder and the vial into Emma's hands. "Hide this and leave through the back door, quickly." Emma barely had time to hide the items in her purse before the door opened violently. Two burly men in suits entered, followed by none other than David Mitchell. "Well, well," said David, his cold smile freezing Emma's blood. "What a coincidence finding you here, sister-in-law. I thought you were at the spa." Dr. Bennett positioned himself between Emma and the newcomers. "Gentlemen, this is a private clinic. You can't barge in like this." David ignored the doctor, his eyes fixed on Emma. "You know, I always knew there was something different about you. So dedicated to my little brother in a coma. So curious about his treatment." Emma felt panic rise in her chest, but forced herself to stay calm. "David, it's not what you're thinking. I was just—" "Spare me the lies," interrupted David, his voice now laden with threat. "You've meddled with forces you don't understand, Emma. Now be a good girl and come with us. We have a lot to talk about." Dr. Bennett tried to intervene, but one of the men pushed him rudely aside. Emma knew she was cornered. Her mind raced, seeking a way out. At that moment, as if fate had decided to intervene, the lights in the office flickered and went out. The momentary confusion was all Emma needed. In a quick movement, she knocked over a file cabinet, creating a barrier between her and her pursuers, and ran for the back door. "Get her!" shouted David, his voice echoing through the dark corridor. Emma ran like she had never run before, her heart pounding frantically. She knew that her life had changed irrevocably. There was no going back. With the evidence in her purse and the knowledge of what had really happened to Nathan, she was now a threat to the Mitchell family. As she ran through the busy streets of the city, blending into the crowd, Emma knew she was alone against powerful and relentless enemies. But she also knew she was Nathan's only hope. With determination growing in her chest, she made a silent promise. No matter what happened, she would uncover the whole truth and save Nathan. Even if it meant facing the wrath of one of the most powerful families in the country. The hunt had begun, and Emma was determined not to be the prey. Emma ran through the streets of downtown, her heart beating erratically. Every face in the crowd seemed a potential threat. Every car that passed could be carrying David's men. She knew she needed a plan, and fast. Turning a corner, she spotted a busy coffee shop. With a quick glance over her shoulder, Emma entered, blending in with the customers. She sat at a table in the back, trying to calm her ragged breathing. Fortalti. Ordering a coffee with trembling hands, her mind worked frantically. Where to go? Who to trust? The Mitchell mansion was out of the question, and she couldn't risk involving her father in this dangerous situation. It was then that she remembered. Sarah. Nathan's stepmother had always seemed to be on her side, warning her about the family's dangers. But how to contact her without drawing the attention of Eleanor or David? At that moment her cell phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. Central Station, locker 237, key under bench 15. Be quick and careful. S. Emma felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. How did Sarah know? Had she been watched all this time? Without time to hesitate, Emma left some bills on the table and exited the coffee shop, this time with a destination in mind. At Central Station, she located bench 15, pretending to tie her shoelace while retrieving the hidden key. Locker 237 contained a travel bag. Inside, clothes, money, a prepaid cell phone, and a note. It's not safe for us to meet now. Go to the address below. There you'll find help. Destroy this note. Good luck. So, following the instructions, Emma headed to the indicated address. It was an old building in the suburbs. With her heart in her throat, she rang the doorbell of apartment 3B. The door opened, revealing a familiar face she didn't expect to. See Dr. James Reynolds, the doctor who had examined Nathan at the mansion. Quick, come in, he said, pulling her inside and closing the door. We don't have much time. The apartment was simple but welcoming. Seated on the sofa was a middle-aged woman whom Emma immediately recognized from photos she had seen at the mansion, Marianne, the late wife of Nathan's father. But how? stammered Emma, stunned. Marianne smiled sadly. It's a long story, dear. But the important thing is that we're here to help you and Nathan. In the next few hours, Emma heard a story that defied everything she believed she knew. Marianne hadn't died as everyone thought. She had discovered Mitchell Enterprises' illicit activities years ago, and fearing for her life, had faked her own death with the help of Dr. Reynolds, an old family friend. When Nathan began investigating, "The irregularities in the company, I knew he was in danger," explained Marianne. "I tried to warn him discreetly, but it was too late." "The accident," began Emma. "Wasn't an accident," confirmed Dr. Reynolds. "Eleanor and David had been slowly poisoning Nathan for months. When they realized he was about to expose them, they intensified the dose. The accident was just a facade." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. "So, all this time—" "We were working behind the scenes," completed Marianne. "Sarah has been our ally inside the mansion, observing and keeping us informed. But we needed someone close to Nathan, someone who could act when the right moment came." "And that someone is me," concluded Emma, the realization falling on her like a weight. Dr. Reynolds nodded, taking the vial that Emma had brought from Dr. Bennett's office. "This antidote is our best chance, but administering it won't be easy. Eleanor and David will be more vigilant than ever now." "Additionally," added Marianne, "we need the evidence Nathan gathered. Without it, even if we manage to wake him, it will be his word against Eleanor and David's." Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "What should I do?" Marianne took her hand, her eyes shining with determination. "You need to go back to the mansion, Emma." "What?" exclaimed Emma, shocked. "But they know I discovered something. David saw me at Dr. Bennett's office." "Exactly," said Dr. Reynolds. "And that's why you'll go back repentant, begging for forgiveness. You'll say you panicked, that you were confused and frightened by everything. That's happened since you married Nathan. That you just want the best for him and for the family." "They won't believe it," argued Emma. "They don't need to believe completely," explained Marianne. "They just need to believe enough to let you back in. Once inside, you'll have the chance to administer the antidote and find the evidence Nathan hid." Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. When she opened them again, there was a new determination in her gaze. "All right," she said. "I'll do it." The next few hours were dedicated to planning every detail. Emma memorized the correct dosage of the antidote, learned techniques to evade surveillance, and received a tracking device disguised as a brooch. When night fell, Emma was ready to return to the Mitchell mansion. Before leaving, Marianne hugged her tightly. "Remember," she whispered, "you are stronger than you think. Nathan needs you. We all need you." With a heavy heart but determined, Emma left the apartment. As she walked toward a taxi, she knew she was about to enter the lion's den, but this time she was no longer a defenseless prey. She was a woman on a mission, ready to face the Mitchell family's demons and save the man who, without realizing, it had become so important to her. The taxi stopped in front of the imposing gates of the Mitchell mansion. Emma took a deep breath, adjusting the tracking brooch on her coat. Her heart beat frantically, but her determination was unshakable. As she approached the entrance, she saw Eleanor and David waiting for her, their faces masks of disapproval and suspicion. Emma forced tears to her eyes, preparing for the performance of her life. I'm so sorry," she sobbed, running into Eleanor's arms. "I panicked. Everything has been so confusing, so frightening. I just wanted to help Nathan, but I did everything wrong." Eleanor embraced her stiffly, exchanging a look with David over Emma's head. "Shh, dear, it's all right now, you're home." David, however, didn't seem convinced. "And what exactly were you doing at that doctor's office?" Emma wiped her tears, her voice trembling. I heard rumors, people talking about alternative treatments for cases like Nathan's. I just wanted a second opinion. But when I saw you there, I panicked. I thought I had done something terrible." "Oh, Emma," sighed Eleanor, her tone a mixture of sympathy and reproach. "You should have talked to us. We're a family now, remember?" Emma nodded fervently. I know. Forgive me, please. I promise I'll never do anything without consulting you first." David still observed. her with suspicion, but Eleanor seemed more receptive. "Well, the important thing is that you're back. Let's go in, you must be exhausted." As she was guided into the mansion, Emma felt the weight of the antidote vial in her pocket. First step completed. Now came the really difficult part. In the days that followed, Emma played the role of the repentant and submissive daughter-in-law to perfection. She spent hours at Nathan's side, reading to him and talking as if nothing had changed. But her eyes were always alert, looking for an opportunity to administer the antidote. The chance came one afternoon when Eleanor had to leave to handle matters for the charity event, and David was in a business meeting. Emma convinced the nurse on duty to take a brief break, promising to call if there was any change. With trembling hands, she took the vial from the hiding place she had created in her room. Following Dr. Reynolds' instructions, she carefully administered the antidote into Nathan's IV. "Please work," she whispered, holding his hand. "Come back to me, Nathan." The minutes that followed were the longest in Emma's life. She watched attentively for any movement, any change in Nathan's breathing, and then, almost imperceptibly, his fingers moved in her hand. Emma's heart leaped. "Nathan, can you hear me?" Slowly, as if emerging from a deep sleep, Nathan's eyes began to open. His voice, hoarse from disuse, was just a whisper. Who are you?" Tears of relief and emotion streamed down Emma's face. "I'm Emma. I'm here. To help you." Before she could say more, she heard footsteps approaching rapidly. In panic, she hid the empty vial and tried to appear casual. The door opened violently, revealing Eleanor, David, and two men whom Emma recognized as family security guards. "What's happening here?" demanded Eleanor, her eyes narrowing as she saw Nathan awake. He just woke up," stammered Emma, trying to sound surprised and emotional. "It's a miracle." David approached the bed, his cold eyes examining Nathan and then Emma. "A miracle, is it? Or something more?" Eleanor quickly took control of the situation. "David, call the doctor immediately. You two," she pointed to the Archai security guards. "Stand guard at the door. No one enters or leaves without my authorization." Turning to Emma, Eleanor forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dear, why don't you go rest a bit? You must be very emotional. We'll take care of Nathan now." Emma knew she had no choice. With a last look at Nathan, who seemed confused and disoriented, she left the room. As soon as the door closed behind her, Emma ran to her room. Her heart was beating furiously. Nathan was awake, but still in danger. She needed to find the evidence. He had hidden before Eleanor and David could silence him again. Recalling everything she had discovered in the past weeks, Emma began to systematically search every corner of Nathan's room, every possible hiding place in the mansion. Time was running out, and she knew her own life could be at risk. As night fell over the Mitchell mansion, Emma felt she was about to unravel the family's last and most dangerous secret. But with Nathan awake and Eleanor and David on high alert, she knew the true test of her courage and cunning was just beginning. The Mitchell mansion was buzzing with frantic energy. Doctors came and went, and Emma could hear raised voices coming from Nathan's room. She knew her window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Taking advantage of the general distraction, Emma sneaked into Nathan's old office. Her hands trembled. As she searched drawers and shelves, desperately seeking anything that could incriminate Eleanor and David, it was then that she noticed something strange in the floor beneath the desk. A slightly loose board. With her heart racing, Emma carefully removed it, revealing a secret compartment. Inside, there was a flash drive and a sealed envelope. "I found it," she whispered, feeling a wave of relief and fear. At that moment, the office door opened abruptly. David stood there, his eyes gleaming with icy fury. "I knew it," he growled, advancing. "You never really fooled us, did you, Emma?" Emma backed away, pressing the evidence against her chest. "David, you don't understand. What you did, it's wrong. Nathan didn't deserve this." "Nathan was weak," spat David. "He was going to ruin everything our family built. We couldn't allow it." As David approached threateningly, Emma realized she had nowhere to run. In an act of desperation, she threw a paperweight in his direction and ran for the door. The mansion's It's like corridors transformed into a confusing labyrinth as Emma ran, the sound of David's footsteps echoing behind her. She needed to reach Nathan, needed to escape. Turning a corner, she collided with someone. It was Sarah. "Emma, what's happening?" asked Sarah, alarmed. "No time," gasped Emma. "I need to get to Nathan. I have the evidence." Sarah nodded. "Quickly, go. I'll delay them." With gratitude in her eyes, Emma continued her run. Behind her, she could hear Sarah confronting David, gaining precious seconds. Finally, she reached Nathan's room. To her surprise, the door was unlocked. Inside, she found Nathan sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert. "Emma," he said, his eyes lighting up with recognition, "I remember you. You were with me all this time, weren't you?" Tears sprang to Emma's eyes. "Yes, Nathan. I'm here to get you out. We have to go now." But before they could move, Eleanor entered the room, followed by 2 security guards. "Ah, what a touching scene," she said, her tone cold. "The devoted wife rescuing the sick husband. Too bad it's all a farce, isn't it, Emma?" Emma protectively positioned herself in front of Nathan. "The only farce here is yours, Eleanor. I have proof of everything you did." "Here it's over." Eleanor laughed, a humorless sound. "You really think some evidence will bring down the Mitchell family? We are more powerful than you can imagine, dear." At that moment, the sound of sirens began to echo in the distance, rapidly approaching. Eleanor's face paled. "What did you do?" Emma smiled, showing the brooch on her lapel. "Don't underestimate the power of having allies, Eleanor." The next scenes unfolded like an action movie. The police invaded the mansion, led by a detective, whom Emma recognized from photos she had seen with Marianne, an old family friend who had been removed years ago for investigating the Mitchells' suspicious activities. Eleanor and David were detained, protesting and threatening to use their connections. Sarah appeared, revealing herself as an informant who had secretly collaborated with the authorities for years. Amid the chaos, Emma turned to Nathan, who was observing everything with a mixture of shock and relief. "I'm sorry," she said, holding his hand. "You must be confused and frightened, but I promise to explain everything." Nathan squeezed her hand back, a small smile forming on his lips. "You saved me. I don't know how, but I know it was you. Thank you." As they were escorted out of the mansion, protected by the police, Emma felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The truth had finally come to light, and the Mitchell family's demons had been exposed. But as she looked at Nathan, still weak but alive and awake by her side, Emma knew the journey was far from over. There was much to be explained, much to be rebuilt. And perhaps amid all the chaos and destruction, there was a chance for a new beginning, not based on lies and manipulation, but on truth and mutual trust. As the sun rose on the horizon, marking the beginning of a new day, Emma and Nathan left the Mitchell mansion behind, ready to face together whatever the future held. 6 months had passed since the fateful night when the truth about the Mitchell family came to light. The trial of Eleanor and David had been one of the biggest scandals the country had ever seen, exposing a network of corruption and crimes that extended far beyond the family business. Emma was sitting on the porch of a small beach cottage, watching the sun set on the horizon. The sound of the waves was a comforting contrast to the chaos of the past months. Beside her, Nathan absently leafed through a newspaper, the headlines still echoing the developments in the Mitchell case. "It's still hard to believe everything that happened," murmured Nathan, closing the newspaper. Emma nodded, taking his hand. "Sometimes it feels like it was all a dream, or a nightmare." The months following the fall of the Mitchell family were an emotional roller coaster. Nathan needed time to recover not only physically, but also to process his own family's betrayal. Emma was by his side every step of the way, helping him reconnect with his memories and deal with the harsh reality of what had happened. The revelation that Marianne, Nathan's mother, was alive was another shock. The reunion between mother and son was emotional and cathartic, filling a void that Nathan didn't even know existed. "You know," said Nathan, turning to Emma with a soft smile, "amid all this madness, you were my anchor, a stranger who became my savior." Emma felt her heart race. In the past months, while helping Nathan in his recovery and working together to rebuild what was left of Mitchell Enterprises, now renamed and dedicated to ethical practices, something had blossomed between them. Something real, not based on lies or manipulation. "It wasn't just me," she responded modestly. "Sarah, your mother, Dr. Reynolds. Everyone risked a lot to save you." Nathan nodded, his gaze lost on the horizon. "It's true. And yet, it was you. Who was there every day, even when I didn't know who you were?" He turned, his eyes meeting hers with intensity. "Emma, our marriage began as a farce, a cruel manipulation, but what I feel for you now is the most real thing I've ever experienced." Emma's heart seemed to want to leap from her chest. "Nathan, Wait," he gently interrupted her, standing up and kneeling before her. "Emma Sanders, would you do me the honor of marrying me? Not out of obligation, not for a contract, but for love." Tears of joy sprang to Emma's eyes. "Yes," she whispered, "1,000 times yes." As they kissed, the sun finally set, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The journey had been long and dangerous, full of twists and betrayals, but also of courage and true love. In the months and years that followed, Emma and Nathan worked tirelessly to transform the tainted legacy of the Mitchell family into something positive. The company, under new direction, became an example of ethical practices and social responsibility. Marianne, finally free to live openly, dedicated herself to charitable causes, using her experience to help other victims of abuse and manipulation. Sarah, recognized for her crucial role in exposing the truth, became an advocate for the rights of coma patients and their families. Emma and Nathan's wedding, held in an intimate ceremony by the sea, was a celebration not only of their love, but of the victory of truth over lies, of courage over fear. As they danced under the stars, surrounded by those who had risked everything to help them, Emma reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them there. From a desperate young woman accepting a dark deal to a strong woman who had faced one of the most powerful families in the country, she had discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. Nathan pulled her closer, whispering in her ear, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Emma smiled, tears of happiness shining in her eyes. "Never," she answered. "Our love is stronger than any lie." And so, under the starry sky with the sound of waves in the background, Emma and Nathan sealed their commitment to each other, ready to write a new chapter, this time based on truth, trust, and unconditional love. The soft sound of rain hitting the window panes of the Mitchell mansion was almost hypnotic. Emma observed through the window of the room that gradually was ceasing to feel like a prison and beginning to feel like a refuge. Nathan remained unconscious, his face serene, as if sleeping without hurry to wake. But in Emma's heart, a silent storm was forming. Since hearing Sarah's veiled words about the possible manipulation of Nathan's medication, Emma couldn't shake off the disquiet. She noticed David's increasingly attentive glances, Eleanor's smiles always too cutting to be gentle. The sensation of being watched was constant. On a grey afternoon, while reading to Nathan, Emma noticed a subtle difference. His breathing seemed stronger, his eyelids fluttered now and then. A delicate hope blossomed in her chest, mixed with fear of what might happen when he woke. Who would Nathan Mitchell be away from the shadows that surrounded him? Leaving the cool room, she found Sarah in the corridor. The woman's face bore a tense smile. "He's different today, isn't he?" asked Sarah softly. Emma nodded. "That means we need to act with more care. Eleanor won't let things get out of control." Sarah firmly held Emma's arm before moving away. "Observe, dear, the walls of this house speak. You need to learn to listen." That night, a more intimate dinner was convened. Only Eleanor, David, and Emma at the table. The environment was suffocating, as if the crystal chandeliers threatened to collapse at any moment. "Emma, dear," began Eleanor, her voice mellifluous but cold as the marble beneath their feet, "I'd like to discuss the future with you. After all, you are now a Mitchell." David smiled slightly, his blue eyes sharp as razors. "We're thinking of making your public image more visible," continued Eleanor. "Interviews, charity events, appearances alongside Nathan, even in this situation. It's essential that the market perceives that everything is under control. Emma felt a chill. It was clear they wanted to use her as a facade while the backstage burned. "Of course I understand," she replied, disguising her caution. "I'm willing to collaborate." David leaned slightly forward. "It's important that there are no slip-ups, Emma. Any misstep can be interpreted as weakness." The threat was subtle, but it was there. She smiled delicately, even with her hands clenched under the table. "Don't worry. I know exactly the role you expect me to play." But inside her, she was beginning to draw her own script. The next day, taking advantage of the mansion's commotion with the arrival of a press team to prepare a future report, Emma decided to act. Remembering Sarah's words and the instructions received, she returned to Nathan's old office. She examined the bookshelves again, the carefully aligned books. Then she noticed something out of place. A small mark on the side of the desk, almost imperceptible. A false compartment. With agile fingers, she managed to unlock it. There she found a built-in safe. With no combination in sight, Emma remembered the notes in the document she had found earlier. Dates, numbers. She tried a sequence linked to Nathan's birthday, and to her surprise, the metallic click echoed through the room. Inside there was a folder filled with documents, bank statements, suspicious contracts, and hidden beneath the papers a small flash drive. Her heart raced. This was more than evidence. It was the key to bringing down the entire dark empire of the Mitchells. But before she could put everything away, she heard footsteps in the corridor. Quickly she hid the safe again and left with the flash drive discreetly in her coat pocket. Outside, David passed by her, a dangerous smile on his face. "Lost, little sister-in-law?" Emma kept her face impassive. "Just getting familiar with the place." David winked, as if he knew more than he was saying. She moved on with the certainty that the game had just become even riskier. The next morning, while Emma mentally organized her next steps, Walter appeared discreetly at her door. "Miss Emma, someone is waiting for you in the garden." He asked not to be announced. Emma frowned but followed Walter. In the garden, under the shade of a fig tree, an elegant and discreet man waited. As soon as he saw her, he removed his hat. "Sorry for the surprise. I'm Richard Fields, Dr. James. Reynolds spoke about you. I know what you have in your hands." Emma felt her stomach turn. She had never mentioned this to anyone besides Sarah and Reynolds. "How can I trust you?" Fields smiled serenely. "You can't, but you can trust what you're fighting to do. I'm not here for promises. I'm here because if you want to bring down Eleanor and David, you'll need allies who aren't bound by the rules of this house." He extended a card with an address and a password. "When you're ready, take that flash drive to the indicated location. Don't delay. Eleanor doesn't usually leave stones in the path." Without further words, he moved away through the garden, disappearing among the trees. Emma held the card as if it were an exit ticket. She knew that with each step, the danger increased, but the truth and freedom were closer than ever. The card delivered by Richard Fields seemed to burn in Emma's pocket. Throughout the morning, she maintained her routine in the mansion. She visited Nathan, discreetly participated in a meeting with Eleanor about the charity event, and pretended total disinterest in the family business. But inside, each minute was a countdown. In the early morning of the following day, when the mansion was silent and the security guards knew her steps too well to suspect, Emma left her room silently. Sarah, upon being discreetly informed during dinner, promised to keep Eleanor and David occupied the next day. With careful steps, Emma left through the back and walked to the deserted street. She took a taxi and followed the address on Fields' card. She arrived at a simple house on the outskirts of the city. Fields was already waiting for her. "Did you bring it?" he asked without preamble. Emma took out the flash drive and placed it in his hand. "What exactly is in these files?" Fields connected the device to an old laptop and began opening files. Emma saw fraudulent contracts, illegal transactions, facade agreements. But one file caught her attention: recorded videos from internal cameras showing conversations between David and Eleanor, clearly talking about keeping Nathan incapacitated and about money embezzlement. This is more than enough to turn them in, whispered Emma, horrified. Fields nodded. Tomorrow this will be in the right hands, but I need you to return to the mansion as if nothing had happened. David already suspects you. They may react dangerously. And Nathan? Asked Emma. He started to wake up, but he's still fragile. They might try something more radical. Fields closed the laptop. Now that we know where it hurts them, we can act quickly. Trust me, Emma. We won't let anything happen to him. The next morning, Emma returned to the mansion. David was in the corridor as if waiting for her. Sleep well? He asked, his smile too cutting to be casual. Emma held his gaze. Like an angel. Eleanor called her for a conversation right after breakfast. Emma, dear, you know we're very close to the charity event. Everyone expects to see you by Nathan's side. Incidentally, he seems to have had a slight improvement, hasn't he? The tone was sweet, but Emma perceived the poison. Yes, he even squeezed my hand yesterday. It was a good sign. Eleanor nodded. Excellent. Now, a recommendation. Her expression hardened. Be careful with the steps you take, dear. Some doors once opened have no return. Emma forced a smile. I always take care, after all. I don't want to harm the family's image. The warning was clear. They were aware of something. She needed to act quickly. The night of the charity event arrived. The mansion was illuminated, filled with financial elite and the press. Emma, impeccably dressed, seemed a true Mitchell, alongside Sarah and David. Nathan, to general surprise, had been discreetly transferred to a reserved wing and did not attend, officially on medical recommendation. But Emma knew there was something more. During the afternoon, she noticed unusual movement in the medical wing. Nurses replaced different security guards. While circulating through the hall, she smiled and greeted people, but her mind was on full alert. She knew that Fields had delivered part of the evidence to the police, but she feared a desperate move from Eleanor. At the height of the event, Emma was discreetly approached by Walter, the faithful butler. Mrs. Emma, we need to talk. Something isn't right in the medical wing. Sarah asked you to go there discreetly. With a rehearsed smile, Emma left the dance floor and followed Walter to the deserted corridor. What happened? She asked. Walter was pale. Eleanor dismissed all the trusted staff from the wing, and a strange doctor entered a short while ago, accompanied by David. Emma's stomach turned. We need to go now. They reached the silent medical wing. The door to Nathan's room was ajar. Emma felt her blood freeze upon hearing voices inside. David was speaking low but clearly. It's simple. Give a dose high enough to cause failure. Then we'll say it was his body that couldn't endure the fight. The doctor, visibly nervous, hesitated. This could be too risky. Eleanor, who was also in the room, cut in coldly. Nathan has lived too long. He's a burden, and the company needs to move on. Without him, do what needs to be done before... They could act. Emma abruptly entered, her gaze fixed on David. I knew it. You would never give up until completely destroying him. David turned, surprised. You shouldn't be here. Emma raised her cell phone. Too bad this conversation is being transmitted in real time to the authorities. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. You really think you'll leave here alive, dear? But at that moment the sound of sirens filled the silence. Fields had arrived, accompanied by the police. The doctor backed away, terrified, and David took a step toward Emma, but was restrained by the police officers. Eleanor remained cold, but knew the game was over. Emma ran to Nathan's bed, holding his hand. It's over, Nathan. You're safe now. He slightly squeezed her hand, his eyes beginning to open. As the police led Eleanor and David away, Emma knew her fight had ended. But for her and Nathan, a new beginning was finally about to blossom. The medical wing of the mansion was silent, but this time, for the first time in months, there was a different atmosphere, one of relief. Nathan, after hours of monitoring, finally opened his eyes completely. Confused, oscillating between drowsiness and lucidity, his eyes searched for a fixed point, and found Emma seated by his side, holding his hand. Emma. His voice was hoarse, weak, but filled with recognition. She smiled, containing her tears. "I'm here, Nathan. Everything's okay now." He frowned, trying to understand. "What happened? Where are Eleanor? David?" Before she could answer, Sarah entered the room with silent steps, her eyes teary but firm. "You don't need to worry about them, son. They are exactly where they deserve to be." Nathan blinked slowly, processing. Emma squeezed his hand lightly. "Rest. We'll explain everything later. The important thing is that you're free, Nathan. Finally." While Nathan spent the days recovering, physically and emotionally, the world outside the mansion was in an uproar. The newspapers headlined in bold letters, "Mitchell Empire in crisis, fraud and attempted homicide exposed." Eleanor and David were formally accused, with irrefutable evidence provided by the material from Emma and Fields. The financial elite whispered among themselves, shocked by the fall of the siblings who for years had controlled everything with an iron hand. Emma, now inevitably at the center of public attention, remained discreet. She refused interviews and appearances, staying focused on Nathan and the silent reconstruction of what remained. Sarah temporarily assumed command of the company's external operations, rescuing the partners' trust and distancing herself from any stain left by Eleanor. On one of these days, while Emma read to Nathan in the garden, he interrupted with a tired smile. "I should have listened to you earlier." She closed the book and looked at him. "You did what you could, Nathan. Now we have time to do everything differently." 2 weeks later, with Nathan stronger, a special meeting was organized. Sarah, Emma, and Fields were present. "The company is stable again," said Sarah, "but it's you, Nathan, who needs to decide the next steps." Nathan looked at Emma, then at the others. "I know exactly what I want." Everyone waited. "I want to start by eliminating everything that was built based on lies and fraud. Restructure from scratch. No obscure favors, no manipulated contracts." "Her clean legacy." Fields nodded, satisfied. "This will shake many people accustomed to old practices." Nathan gave a slight smile. "Then it's time to change the game." He looked at Emma with eyes now clear, determined. "And I want you by my side, Emma. Not just in the company, but in everything." She felt her heart race, but maintained a serene smile. "I was already here, Nathan. Now, it's just making it official." Months later, the transformation of Mitchell Enterprises was visible. Under Nathan's leadership, now completely recovered, and with Sarah and Emma as strategic pillars, the company reformulated policies, launched new projects, focused on social responsibility, and left behind the shadow that Eleanor and David had cast. But one change caught the media and market's attention: the name. In a press conference, Nathan officially announced, "Today we end a cycle." Mitchell Enterprises was always associated with a family's power, but we want more than that now. We want to be synonymous with integrity, innovation, and future. From now on, we are Sanders and Mitchell. He looked directly at Emma, who was among the guests. "Because none of this would have been possible without Emma Sanders, and because this is how I wish to build everything from now on, together." The press applauded, but for Emma, the most important sound was the complicit silence between the two of them, a solid bond that had withstood pressure, threats, and especially lies. The storm had passed, and there, between flashes and new contracts, a new story was born.